I don't like to say it's about drugs, the first thing, even though it is.
I usually say that it's about an undercover cop having a mental breakdown.
Who gets too involved in the drugs that he's trying to destroy himself.
A drug rehab that is manufacturing illegal drugs.
It's got nudity.
You just tell people to scan or darkly, and they go, what?
Quirky conversation between these oddballs.
You obtain multiple personality.
It's sort of science fiction. It takes place in the future.
It's not like a stoner drug movie.
Using experimental technology.
It's a sci-fi movie, but it's not typical sci-fi lasers.
Spacecrafts and stuff. It's just taking place in the future.
This is a weird animal.
Dealing with the social issues.
Like what we're doing is basically making two films. So we write the script, then we do the casting, we shoot the actual film, and then we lock it, just like you would a normal live action feature. And then we have to bring it into the animation process, and then there's a lengthy post-production process. In this case, it was 18 months, which originally we thought it would be about 9 months, so it's twice as long as we thought it would take.
I'm definitely shooting and composing with a view to what the animators are going to do to that, and also I'm giving them the colors that they use because they basically sample those colors.
I don't feel there are any limitations really to what we can do in post. You know, we've created a whole another world almost altogether. We created Anaheim by shooting a lot of, you know, exteriors in Anaheim and then just kind of compositing them in to our footage we shot in Austin, and then we, you know, you can animate anything. So we've sort of created this whole alternate universe.
Randy, the compositor, will show up on set and say, I really need this, and I need this. But once he explained what they needed, which they don't really need green screen, they don't need a nice key, they just need something like flat behind an actor that they can pull a key out of.
Once we lock picture, once it's completely edited, we bring it into our software, and then we allow different animators to basically draw over that image.
Because of the level of detail that I'm kind of going for this time, it's sort of starting to scare people.
Oh man, look, there's a new movie, you gotta sign up for this thing. So I sent them just a CD with some scanned images from my sketchbook, and got a call back, came in and drew for them. So it's pretty easy. It was really nerve-wracking.
My parents were in San Antonio, they live here, they were down there for a business thing. Traffic was heavy, so they stopped at a local coffee shop. And their small weekly San Antonio newspaper had an ad in it. There are a lot of people who have stories like that where they just kind of tripped across destiny.
I was hired to work on Waking Life, and that was kind of my introduction to animation.
I've worked for Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, just about everyone, and kind of studied line art really intensely my whole life.
I have a degree in advertising, focusing on graphic design, and I got into animation with the movie Waking Life.
I've been a professional animator for almost 10 years. I've worked on Space Jam, Bugs Bunny, Michael Jordan, Anastasia, Quest for Camelot, Prince of Egypt.
I'm an illustrator. That's what I got my degree in.
No commercial, no freelance, just the suffering artist type thing, you know, just making drawings for trying to nail shows.
Like social commentary on American culture, a lot of pop images.
Yeah, it's strange how there's like, 50 or so animator or rotoscope artists, and only a handful have any kind of background in animation.
We're much more organized this time. We have like animation kind of teams and leaders, and we're having regular meetings.
We did develop a style guide early on that sort of, it's just a book full of images of here's how you draw this person.
We'd take the characters from different angles or different perspectives, whether it be a close-up and mid-shot or maybe an angle that's kind of below, and we would create a style based upon the distance that the camera was from the actual character.
The general style, I guess, gets mandated from Linklater himself, and he wants kind of a painterly version of reality.
Each shot has a certain amount of detail. The close-ups have, of course, with the most detail, where we can really go in. The lighting's usually really great, and you can pick out all the lines and the highlights and some of the tones within the face, and it's more like doing a portrait. And then from a mid-shot, you're not really grasping all the fine details, but you're just trying to grab the essence of the character.
We have your basic style guide, and that's what everyone is shooting for, trying to get close. As the film progresses, you see things working that weren't working in the beginnings.
What you should do with the hair what you should do with the beard, what you should do with the eyes.
It's a new form of motion capture where we're stealing our actors' movements, motions, and performances and translating it through our own eye and flip of our pen.
And it is an unusual type of animation in that they're painting every frame in a, you know, they're painting over the frame that exists. It's so interesting.
I think the software is pretty straightforward. And what it comes down to is the way the artist handles it. It's all through a tablet, which is pressure sensitive, so if you're really heavy-handed when you do your line work, it will show up.
Why are you rotoscoping a film? Why are you drawing over footage? What's the point of that? And I think what's really awesome is that we get Keanu's performance. We get Winona's performance. It's not Winona or Keanu doing a voice acting and then my interpretation of what it would look like, but it is actually their performance.
That black line, outlined sort of look is the only thing that's really consistent throughout, because there's different approaches to different characters, you know, backgrounds versus characters and fulls and mediums and everything. That sort of comic book black look, and not this real heavy Mike Mignola, real dark black.
It was, of course, inspired by all that stuff, but we weren't trying to copy a Frank Miller or anything like that. I think it was just a matter of allowing the artist to kind of develop that look.
We've even split up as far as like line work and color, where someone's that's really adept at lines and struggles with color can blow through all the lines, and somebody can follow up and do color on top of it.
Keep it consistent, keep it on track, keep it fast. That's been one of the biggest challenges, is making our frame count from week to week and that sort of thing.
You know, relying on the video as a source as opposed to just creating a lot of the light and creating the color. We're relying on the video to nail that really realistic movement, shape, color, and everything.
But when you have to go in and then redraw that and animate it, it's just severely difficult. If everybody was wearing plaid, this film wouldn't get done. I mean, there's no way to animate plaid for an hour. It'd be terrible.
The whole animation process, as I learned last time, it's so cumulative and so slow overall. I mean, hundreds of hours to do 1 minute of film.
We were thinking it was going to take about 350 man-hours per minute. We ended up being pretty off on that. It took a lot longer than that.
As far as design work goes, and everything gets thrown at Rick, and we're animating in his studio right now.
He's come in to you know, sign off on beard looks for Keanu, which has been a battle, because he's got this patchy beard that they want to keep patchy, but they don't want it too patchy, they don't want it too full, they don't want it scraggly.
We'll save up questions, save up problem areas, and when he does have the time to come by and see how it's going, we nail him with all these, you know, we jump on him and, what about this, what about this, what about this? You know, I've been working in games mostly in the past 6 or 7 years, and in order to work in games, a lot of the artists don't even have to draw. It's all mostly 3D artwork. These people know how to draw. They really know how to draw. And it was intimidating, and it was inspiring. They all carry sketchbooks, so I had to start carrying a sketchbook again and brush up on my drawing skills. So it's been really, really great in that respect. These people are incredible. If a guy's been doing, you know, Barris for a while, I'll go ahead and give him most of the shots with Barris. If a guy's been doing Luckman, I'll give him Luckman.
Keanu, Winona, or also close, medium, long. We've got background guys, and so we just attack a scene.
If there's a scene with, you know, Luckman, Barris, and Arctor, then I'll, you know, divide that between 3 artists and a background artist, and we'll try to balance it to where it all comes in at the same time. We can turn that shot in.
We have a number of people who are doing frex, mainly like the close-ups. Some people do them from mid.
Well, I kept in mind that, you know, they were going to animate it, so I tried to do more kind of weird facial gestures and stuff. I don't know if that's going to work or not, but, you know, I took some liberties, I guess, that I normally wouldn't, because I thought, you know, it's animated, so.
We try to keep the same artist on the same character because they have worked with them. They're faster at doing that character. They can do it to where it looks consistent each time.
You can tell that his team has become familiar with kind of the personalities that they're working with, and so it's just really great. It literally enhances things so much more than I thought it would.
It's a great cast to animate. They all play off each other really well. Their characters definitely respond to each other. You know, when they're animated, it looks even better.
It's this weird phenomenon with men who try to draw women and they don't really do a very good job. As much as they have this desire to make it look beautiful, they wind up kind of like screwing it up. So we got the one person that does it here in the studio the best is Blue. She's just been kind of doing a really good job throughout and kind of going in, and she's like head of our Winona department.
Y tus trailers, visita mi canal.
There were a lot of shots where the lighting wasn't there for us to really prettify her. I think in the beginning they perhaps had a different idea of what Winona would look like.
And then with Woody Harrelson, it's a lot heavier. He's kind of a rough-looking guy, so your line work is kind of rough.
In some ways, I probably went a little more over the top than I would because I knew it was going to be animated. And I don't know. It just seemed to give license to go a little more nutty.
I've kind of been all over. I did some Barris, Robert Downey in the beginning, and I really like drawing him. He's awesome. He's so awesome, and his face is really sculptural. Someone like Woody's got not as many planes, so he's a little more difficult to nail than Robert is, and he's got such an animated way of acting, and especially in this, he's just all over the place, and he's rubbery, and his face is just going crazy, and he's got a lot of inflection. He just really, you know, he makes it easy.
Definitely. In fact, sometimes Rick can come and say, all right, we're going to animate this after the fact so you can kind of stop chewing up the scenery as much on this next take.
My team, we start off at the Brown Bear Lodge, which is is the second scene in the movie with all the guys gathered around, and the announcer character basically bringing us into the concept of a scramble suit and Substance D and so on and so forth. So that was our first scene that we focused on. Through the entire New Path section is really what my team handled. Bruce going into rehab and Bruce going onto the farm.
When I first became lead, our team was about 9, and during the course it's expanded to 12 or 13. The first scene we got was the bike scene, where Barris comes in with the bike that he's just purchased. The next bit that we got was the trouble on the road, where the accelerator goes out. And I think one of the reasons why we got that one was because they were all the main characters, the same ones that we worked with in the bike scene. We took that one and 3 scenes in a row, where it was the accelerator scene, then on the side of the road, and then in the tow truck.
Originally in Waking Life, we had a very small skeleton crew. Rick and myself shot Waking Life. We had 1 sound person and basically like a PA.
Waking Life was like an experiment.
The software at that point in time was nowhere near the level of things that we can do now. Primarily the fact that things had to be unified, as well as having to nail the characters dead on.
The good thing about the rotoscoping is that it really gives you a realistic sense of the people who are doing the acting.
Their performances need to be captured, because I think a lot of thought was given to how they're reacting to one another and this sort of thing. And the performances are fantastic to begin with, so we want to capture that.
There has been a lot of trying to figure out, trying to invent, you know, okay, what is it that makes Winona look like Winona, even though we don't have those elements in this shot. And a lot of the New Path stuff, the extras came in. Keanu, you see him clean shaven, you see him with a haircut. He didn't have a haircut. He still had a beard.
A blue eye for 1 second, then it'll shift into a brown eye, to a different mouth, to a mustache, to a full beard, to nothing.
You know, no information's being passed from the face. So for me, then it was just about architecture. Sometimes trying to, you know, I might make a move a little bigger. You know, I might do something a little, you know, bigger, as opposed to just to do that kind of aspect.
We had close to 20 people working on the scramble suit, which is more than we have on any other team.
Okay, what would Keanu look like if he was a 50-year-old dumpy short guy, you know, with a mustache and balding on top?
You have to have people who are cartoonists, who are illustrators, who can make up you know, faces, because obviously they're not there.
I'd say Arthur is doomed if he's up to something. I'd say Arthur is doomed if he's up to something.
It was about 3 months of development to get the basis of how the scramble technology was going to work.
You're basically layering 3 different characters on what we're calling them threads, and they basically fade in and out of one another throughout these threads, throughout each shot.
The reveal of Winona/Donna/Audrey as Keanu's boss in this movie is the climax of the movie.
We're using, you know, the figure as a reference point, and she's a female, small in stature.
I think she's like 5 feet tall, and Keanu's like 6'2". So we've had to enlarge her a little bit. It's really nice because her emotions really come through because she is so like, she acts with her body in the scramble suits. It's nice.
It was a year on October 18th, I guess like 5 days ago. We had our 1-year anniversary.
It is really cool. One of the best things about this project has been the family aspect.
We're exactly a year into this project now.
You have only a certain amount of time and a certain amount of budget to fit this in, and people have to be able to respond to what you need to get done, and you have to do it in a positive way so nobody's fighting. You know, you just want to get it done.
The camaraderie is really, it's part of what's made this work.
It's like a family. I mean, you know how your little brother's going to act when you punch him in the arm, you know, so it's kind of...
You can make the oddest, strangest joke from any pop culture, weird movie or whatever, and somebody's going to get it, and somebody's going to riff off it. And there's a lot of laughter here.
My favorite thing as an artist, really, is to finish a scene, look at it, and think, I got the lighting right.
I think the one of the things I'm most proud of is a couple of guys on the team who really got Keanu. And actually one of the guys came on later in the project.
If you're just animating a face where there's a highlight that stays there, it's not quite as much of an illusion as it is when that highlight dances across the face and across the features and changes with the contour of the face. So there are scenes where it's just a simple talking head, and I feel like if I've gotten in the zone and gotten all those highlights and all those shadows right, I can make that shot sing. Barris, there's Arthur, there's Luckman, and there's Donna, and all 4 of them are walking out carrying this bike, and you know, you got a far view of the room, and so all these details and all these characters, and as a team lead, it felt like a triumph because I was able to orchestrate, you know, this artist works on here, this artist works here, this artist works here, it all comes together, and boom, we got a beautiful shot.
Just crazy corn in the background. There's one shot where, and it's like 400 frames long, where the wind is blowing through the corn's moving all around, and it's just crazy.
I think actually getting this film done was a huge accomplishment.
The final shot of the movie, 1296, where the camera pans up from Keanu on the ground to this wide angle of the field, that's an insane shot.
We did a jib shot from ground level to 30 feet in the air, and once you get 30 feet in the air on a wide angle lens, usually everything just falls apart. In that instance, I did raise the detail level on the camera, which is an artificial detail.
Standard animation would never even try that. And we're a little crazy for having tried that too.
It will give the animation team more information in there to draw upon.
That's a keystone shot. People need to appreciate how tough that was. Yeah, 1,296 shots.
It was easy to shoot. Just put it on a crane, goes up, guys walk down the corn rows, you know, it's a nice day.
Y tus trailers,
Then we
visita
get
mi
into the
canal.
animation part and it's just like living hell.
I think if any of us had grasped the scope of how big this thing was going to be, I don't know if we would have been so gung-ho to get on board.
Number?
No, I was
A scanner, Darkly.
This attitude of mine shows up in my recent novel, A Scanner, Darkly, where a narcotics agent winds up reporting on himself turning over information on himself to his higher-ups. The paranoia of the Nixon period was so great by the government and also by the counterculture, the Berkeley people. Anybody like me who grew up and was part of the Berkeley counterculture became a marked man during the Nixon administration.
A Scanner Darkly came from his difficulties in his own life and friends and family.
The paranoia that they feel is that similar to the paranoia a lot of people are starting to feel, just that if you can't speak out.
It seems even more important and relevant today than when we started, in lieu of the current headlines, the administration and the surveillance that's sort of being carried out now.
It is impossible to tell how much of our fears were justified. I mean, there were illegal entries. My house was broken into, my files were blown open, my papers were stolen. We never found out who did it. My attorney said it was the government. There was no doubt that it was the government. But what they were looking for, I don't know. What they thought I was doing, I don't know. I don't even know if it was the government. But there were many such illegal entries, and an experience like that tends to make you very paranoid, you know, that you are suspected of some crime.
I think he was able to get his ideas across through the genre of science fiction. But I think it took him a long time to come to terms with being in a genre that wasn't necessarily the most respected.
The position which writers such as myself hold in America those positions are very lowly. Science fiction is considered to be something for adolescents, for just high school kids, and for disturbed people in general to read in America.
I guess we're officially in the genre of science fiction, but it didn't feel that way to me. It felt very contemporary and very real world.
So we are limited in our writing to books which have no sex, no violence, and no deep ideas. Just something of an adventure kind of nature, what we call space opera, which is just westerns set in the future.
It doesn't really fit within the genre of the sort of Hollywood sci-fi spectacular.
I felt like I had Philip K. Dick, his family, and then however many, I don't know how many millions of fans out there who kind of feel a special relation, not only to him, but maybe this particular work. You feel like you have this weight on you that is, I felt great about it because I thought, you know, it's a little daunting, but I also felt like I was up for that challenge, and I didn't think they would be disappointed at the end of the day.
I think the screenplay's great. Yeah, I do. I think the essence of the story is there. A lot of the dialogue is there, which is great. There's a lot of humor in the book. I mean, there's some sadness and some pain. There's also a lot of humor, and he's kept a lot of that great dialogue and humor between the characters.
Charles Freck, becoming progressively more and more depressed by what was happening to everyone he knew, decided finally to off himself. There was no problem in the circles where he hung out in putting an end to yourself. You just bought into a large quantity of reds and took them with some cheap wine late at night with the phone off the hook so that no one could interrupt you. The planning part had to do with the artifacts you wanted found on you by later archaeologists, so they'd know from which stratum you came, and also could piece together where your head had been at the time you did it. He spent several days deciding on the artifacts, much longer than he had spent deciding to kill himself, and approximately the same time required to get that many reds. He would be found lying on his back, on his bed, with a copy of Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, which would prove he had been a misunderstood Superman rejected by the masses, and so in a sense murdered by their scorn. And an unfinished letter to Exxon protesting the cancellation of his gas credit card. That way he could indict the system and achieve something by his death over and above what the death itself achieved.
Richard Linklater's adaptation, the director and writer, he wrote a really great adaptation, I felt, and representation of the book.
Well, I thought it was probably the strangest script I've ever read, and I knew Keanu was doing it, and Rick was directing, and I thought, all right, this guy's pretty smart and on a good roll. I wonder how this will turn out.
Well,
I was very confused by the script at first. I mean, it's a bizarre kind of story, you know, with stories within stories, or really more to the point, you know, strange realities within strange, you know, you don't know what's real and what's illusion.
It's one of the most challenging pieces of literature that I've ever read. Both the book and Richard's adaptation, the script.
You know, Rick called me up and said, you know, I wrote this part for you. I mean, it's obviously written, but...
The dead should, if possible, serve the purposes of the living.
I said I wanted to make this book. I think Philip K. Dick deserves a thorough adaptation of his work to tell the whole story, not just pluck a few ideas and do something else with it. I like this story, and to me, I always responded to it because it seemed very personal. I could tell just by reading this that, oh, this was his life. It had to be.
I kept thinking, you know, I'll probably understand this better as you know, the time goes on, but I was still confused. But
let's go, guys! Let's go kick some ass!
I don't know how you prepare for something like this.
Not so fast,
You are flying. Accelerate. Steady. Accelerate. Go down. Jesus. Son of a bitch! Hey! Come on! Accelerate!
I think we go right on action.
Rick, you know, he has an amazing, he is the most laid-back director I ever worked with. I never saw him even remotely get uptight about anything.
He's still a tyrannical megalomaniac. I wouldn't say like Adolf Hitler, but like Mussolini, something like that. I'm just kidding.
I can only think of a couple other people he reminds me of, like Oliver Stone and Robert Altman, and that there's this incredible sense of you really feel trusted, and also, you know, at the end of every day, you're just squoze dry.
And also, he does encourage everybody to contribute and to try things.
Oh, it's funny that you're doing it soft and conspiratorial, and then you're like,
He's got this big graph going on in his head, kind of almost like, I don't know, like playing bingo or something, where he kind of knows like where all the numbers are and how to do it.
Well, I want to see the positions, actually.
He's just one of the finest directors I've ever worked with. The detail and what he brings and the attitude he has, the way he sees them from an angle that most people wouldn't know exists.
I can definitely sense that kind of college ball, like the real athletic mentality, a well-seasoned, you know, ball player, so that it's kind of like, he'll say like you play like you practice, and you know, a lot of his terminology translates well into artistic endeavors, you know.
Kind of under there, but no dialogue.
I've got 2 kids. 2 girls. Little ones.
I don't believe you do. You're not supposed to.
Maybe not.
With Arthur, you know, he's the family man. He's got a wife and kids. He's going down this kind of conceptual path of marriage and husband and father, and he, you know, like he says, I hate my life. Nothing would ever change. This would never end. And there's something inside him where he's not happy. He breaks out of it, you know, without regret.
Oh, I love Keanu. I mean, I thought about this several years ago. I was seeing if he would be available. I think he was right in the middle of Matrix land at that point, and he wasn't interested in doing like another sci-fi thing or whatever. So it took me, I made another run at it a couple years later. So I was kind of obsessed with him being Bob Arthur. I just felt like he'd be great.
Arthur is manipulated, right? I mean, he's manipulated through his own desire.
He looks, does he not, like constantly shifting, vague blur and nothing more, am I right?
Bob Arthur is this really kind of seemingly benevolent and resigned guy who's been through, you know, a wife and kids, and now we've kind of come in to become his surrogate kind of, you know, degenerate family.
Arctur has lost it so much and has been using this drug for so long, which he was clearly told to use. And if you're going to be a good undercover agent, you use it, but, you know, you control it. Well, you can't tell someone that with an addictive drug.
There's a point where Fred becomes Fred, Arctur's Arctur, and Bruce is the, you know, where they come out, I guess, destroyed, obliviated, brought to neutral.
Good news. I think I got you transferred to one of our farms.
Literally, like with each scene and passage, I would kind of mark down what page in the book it was, and then I would write down certain comments that the author had written, Philip K. Dick, about the character, or what the character was saying, or how he felt.
Scenes, he's kind of like just kind of participating, but I think we needed a little strange element, I think.
It was odd, because while I was playing Arctur, I learned about Fred sometimes, and then when I was playing Fred, I learned a bit about Arctur. And they start to look, you know, Arctur doesn't really look at Fred. Fred looks at Arctur.
He would say, hey, I got this German translated, you know, from the book. Here's what it says, you know, like, what does that mean? You know, we're just always talking. He's always engaged, you know. He's at his best when he's totally focused on what he's doing.
And I really tried to, while I was working on it, to, in my own interpretation, just try to, and with Richard, just kind of get the right resonance, I guess, of each character, you know, physically, emotionally, mentally, you know, use that as his thoughts. And so I really followed the book.
In this day and age, the type of society we find ourselves living in, every person of worth needs to have a gun at all times to protect themselves. And we're off. Boom. Deux. Trois. Well, and then I start reading all the scenes with this guy Barris in them, and I just thought, God, this guy's off the hook. And he reminds me of those kind of propeller head guys that, you know, you knew in high school, who kind of like, you know, knew how to take apart the bike and put it back together and all that freaky stuff. And I just thought it'd be really fun.
Robert, you know, he had his character had some riffs, you know, and his behaviors, and you know, it's so extraordinary. You know, it's expressive.
I hear once in a while them saying that Barris actually kind of really knows what's going on. So I couldn't even tell you if I'm actually ratting out my friend or if I'm just trying to get put in custody so I can be safe.
There weren't a lot of actors who could play Barris. It had to be someone who was kind of like, you know, evil, you know, kind of scientist, just had to be really sharp. Someone who had both the intelligence and the humor.
The doodads, man.
Oh yes, of course, right, of course. How could I have forgotten?
But just sending him the script, I thought he's either going to love it and take this as a challenge or not want to go near it. But I think he's just, you know, brave enough.
Say you have 1,500 words in the scene the next day. So you take all of your dialogue and you write it out like a run-on sentence. You write it out illegibly, so unless you kind of know it by the time you write it down, it'll be pointless. And then when you arrive on set the next day or previously, you write it out in acronym. So Hell Hath No Fury, like HHNFLAWS. Then that's one part. So then, if you don't know it, you can't do it in acronym. I think that the mistake that I used to make and that so many actors make is that they become overconfident and think that they know a scene when they don't.
Motherfucker! They did it deliberately! We almost died!
My character, who goes by the name of Luckman, and, you know, obviously hangs out with Downey's character, Keanu's character a lot, and also Winona, you know. I think all of them are more aware of the surveillance. My character is completely oblivious to that kind of thing, but does have a high degree of healthy and maybe unhealthy paranoia.
Shit! I can't do anything!
You know, Woody is kind of like a silent movie star in the, say, a Buster Keaton type of physical, kind of physical humor, almost slapsticky.
But a lot of times it's about the innocence of the character, you know, and Luckman has a real innocence about him, even though he's kind of crazy and messed up in so many ways. my character considers Arthur maybe his best buddy. And yet also, and I have this very contentious relationship with Barris, Downey.
Oh, really?
And yet, we just love each other. You get to see, you know, there was a while that we were doing it, and I was feeling like, you know, I wasn't really understanding the dynamics, and then it just, one day it kicked in when me and Downey were doing this one scene, and then I get on top of him and I really start wailing on him, and then he's like, and he's squished against the edge of the couch, and he can't do anything but reach with his foot and kick me backwards like this, you know?
All right, cut.
And then he gets up and he goes and he grabs a whole stack of newspapers and just brings them over and throws them on top of me. And we were just doing this shit in rehearsal, you know, and that was when it all started to make sense.
And he's just truly a unique, as everyone knows, individual. So, yeah.
All right, what's your first line in the scene?
But to sacrifice someone, a living person, without them ever knowing it, it's incredibly heartbreaking. You know, I really found it to be heartbreaking both to read and to play the character.
I mean, Winona is so smart, such an artist.
My godfather, Timothy Leary, was friends with Philip Dick, and my father was sort of in that circle.
She gave me a note he had given, I had up on my refrigerator. Her godfather, Timothy Leary, had received, Philip K. Dick had been staying with him, but the note just said, "Tim, I'm moving out. You won't see me for a while." You know, like Phil, or bye. It was just some like note you would get from that roommate who's like, "Bye, I'm gone."
Well, I know with when Winona Ryder, who was playing both those characters, spoke about it, she did. I mean, she was always like, "Well, is this what is Donna doing as Hank?"
The story is about loss of identity and an agonizing search for the truth.
You're not supposed to know that Donna's anybody but Donna.
Woody came up with, because I was trying to study like maybe a certain actor to study their movements, like a big guy, you know. He was like, Brian Dennehy, Brian Dennehy. I think that she's so good that she would actually work on her speech.
It wasn't necessary that she do Hank, but I'm glad she did ultimately, because it helped in the creation of Donna.
You have the right to remain silent until, and anything you say can and will be used against you when you, fuck this shit.
I would say that he's probably the most tweaked out. He's probably the guy who's lost it the most and doesn't really have a sense of, I think most of the characters don't have a real sense of reality anymore, but he's probably the most furthest
Guys are gonna kill each other.
I mean, Roy Cochran is wonderfully crazy. I mean, he's a serious actor. I mean, this performance he gives as Freck is kind of off the chart. But Roy has a very serious approach.
I don't think that Freck relates to anybody. He just sort of is there and probably has the intention of relating to people, but just can't.
You know, first day of shooting, he's got these kind of tics and nervous tics, but he was very consistent with it the whole way.
I didn't really do anything. I kind of just came up with my character like 5 minutes before I got on the elevator to go to work.
He's one of these transformative actors who becomes someone else.
I don't know. Is it supposed to be a comedy or not? I don't really know. I don't think, probably not. So I don't know. I'm probably not doing the right thing at all. I have no idea.
Hi. Nice to meet you guys. Hi, Lisa. So nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Laura.
Yeah, you grew up right up the street from us.
Yeah, that's been just a wonderful, you know, addition, I think, to everything, is having Philip K. Dick's daughters, Laura and Issa, you know, kind of aboard with us sort of spiritually. You know, they were concerned about what my take on the book would be in the film. She gave me his own copy from a library, a first edition paperback that was for Dad. So I had it with me. Like, I took it back and showed people, like, hey, this is Philip K. Dick's own copy of Scanner. And I mean, to mix with his intelligence, he just had this kind of incredibly, you know, darkly humorous view of so much. And they said, sure enough, he was always laughing and making people laugh. It was my goal to make this
That's great.
very much a comedy. You know, a dark comedy.
Motherfucker! They didn't deliver me! We almost died, man! They almost fucking got it!
We're looking at some notes that my father left in his I Ching, which was the book that he used partially to write Man in the High Castle. So he's asking the oracle questions specifically about a scanner darkly. And one is, how will scanner be received? And how will it be marketed? This one asks, how will scanner sell? And the answer that he's received is, such allurement has no value to the superior man. And the next question is Scanner a good novel? And the answer is good. And the last is, will any actual films be made and not just options?
Monitored, observed, tracked.
It's important you as citizens continue to report all suspicious activity.
It's no secret we're living in a culture of addiction. Nearly 20% of the population can now be classified as addicts. And as far as anyone can tell, there is but one company that is working and helping the situation. That company is our sponsor, New Path.
I mean, it was always one of my favorite Philip K. Dick novels, but it seemed more relevant today than ever.
They have this technology that they're using, and you know, to be watched and to be controlled.
You know, there's so much of this surveillance and counter-surveillance and people ratting each other out, and the paranoia of whether or not you can trust the guy that you've been hanging out in the living room with for 2 years, you know what I mean?
Wait, what's the reality here? You're saying this, but do you really mean that? Because you're really, you know, there's all these different layers. You don't really know what anybody means.
I was tipped off by the criminal underground that my house was being watched. The license plate numbers of every car that stopped in front of my house was taken. And these were not part of my imagination. These were actual events.
Is it something like 70% of your life you're either on camera or being documented in terms of your transactions, where you are on the street, you know?
There are cameras everywhere. We are being filmed all the time.
And in this kind of paranoid world that they create for themselves, where suddenly everyone's suspect. But I don't think any of them are bad people or have really technically done anything wrong. They're just, what the fuck? You know, it's the society that's sort of wrong and is kind of tweaking them out a little bit.
The way that the government uses the media to completely terrify people.
Who's wielding the camera? What are they doing with the information? You know, even to be seen is not to be known, or that you are known. A scanner darkly through a glass darkly.
We were under surveillance. We really were. There was no doubt about it whatsoever. I've seen my CIA file. I've seen my FBI file. Under the American Freedom of Information Act, I was legally allowed to see both files. The CIA opened my mail. The FBI had a file on me. I've seen both.
And this whole thing could be seen as sort of a cautionary tale, I think, both on a personal level, but then kind of a societal cautionary tale too. Because ultimately, I think you have these people who are just, you know, they're just folks trying to get through their day, you know. For whatever reasons, they end up here, but they're really not bad people.
And they've kind of created almost this really insane family based on, you know, what binds them together is this kind of agreement to, like, be insane and co-sign each other's, you know, demise. So, yeah, I mean, once you're in that realm of activity, you should certainly expect the worst.
He's making a statement, maybe a satirical statement about the drug war.
They were very frank. They were like, you know, if it wasn't for drugs, our dad would still be writing today instead of, you know, dying in 1982.
My father had demons and struggles with his own drug abuse, and he saw a lot of friends and loved ones harmed and or dead.
Taken too far, you know, you go too far. You become, you know, dead, paralyzed, brain impaired, you lose your life. Your life is, you know, and there's certainly a kind of aspect of the book of